roles. And I was watching another interview you did where you mentioned that you wish you delved into that kind of material sooner. So it was making me wonder, what sparked the itch to lean into darker roles and darker material to begin with?
Well, I think I always was drawn to the twisted and the nasty and the evil. It's just that I had a bit of luck with Four Weddings and a Funeral, and there was a wave to surf of rather a lucrative one, and I surfed it. And but you know, even before then, I'd done little weird characters in weird films, and I probably might have enjoyed them a bit more, or might have thought I was a bit better at them than being Mr. Nice Guy. Mr. Nice Guy is quite difficult.
You're pretty good at both, but as someone who considers horror her #1 genre, like, let's keep you in the dark and weird for a lot longer.
Right,
Yeah,
okay.
we can cheer for that. So, digging into the prep process for Mr. Reed now, and also beyond, actually, what is something that stays consistent from role to role with your prep process, but then also what is something specific to Mr. Reed that made this a unique prep process for you?
Well, I don't think with the romantic comedies I ever researched any serial killers or cult leaders. I did a lot of that on this one. I went down a big rabbit hole there. Fascinating. Particularly the ones who was so plausible and sane and charming and had followers, very often female followers, who went on loving them and being devoted to them even after they'd been to prison for killing hundreds of people. That was all quite interesting. But otherwise, it's the usual process that I do, just building a huge, absurdly detailed biography of the character, trying to work out, what happened to him. What's this all about? Because I have a feeling that if you don't do that, you just smell sort of pantomime baddie.
I know you don't want to reveal all the details of the backstory you created, but can you maybe give us like a teeny tiny bit of information that maybe we don't see or hear about directly in the movie, but we could still feel informing your performance throughout it?
Well, I will say I think he's lonely. There was a guy, a serial killer in England called Dennis Nielsen, whose autobiography was called Killing for Company. And that rang a bell. It's the wrong phrase. I've never killed for company, well, not yet. But it struck a chord with regard to this guy, because I always suspected he was the guy, the child, in fact, who struggled to maintain friendships. He was all right to start with. He had some good cards to play. He was quite charming or personable, but after a few days, kids just didn't invite him anymore. And I think he may have been quite bitter about that and upset and tried too hard to be even more interesting and iconoclastic and funny and a prankster, and you end up with that.
That all makes all the sense in the world to me.
Okay.
So you do all this backstory work and all your own prep, but then I was reading a quote from Scott and Brian where they said, you're quite thorough and intense, but then you come to them with question upon question. So it was making me wonder, what were some of your biggest burning questions for them before jumping into production to fully wrap your head around who he was and the story they wanted to tell?
Well, an awful lot of them were just little details of, hang on, wait a minute, Scott and Brian, does he know about the box of matches, or stuff like that, tiny, thousands of emails like that. The bigger question between me and the directors was, I see him as this university professor type who thinks he's quite funny and makes jokes and thinks he's great with the young people. And I wanted to go quite far down that road. And I think they hesitated for a moment and then went with me. That was probably our biggest discussion. I mean, there's more. I did more silly things in the shoot than ended up in the film, but they're probably right.
Is there any particular silly thing that you did on set that you were sure was going to get cut from the film, but now we can see it in the finished product?
Well, conversely, there were some things I did which I thought were hilarious, which were bound to be in the film, which fucking well are not in the film. Uh, but I do think they know what they're doing. It's funny, I think I've watched it today for about the fourth time, and that's how long it takes if you're in something, I find, to actually see it for what it is, particularly if you've got an audience. You finally see what it is, you relax, instead of just thinking, oh, shit, in that moment. You start to see it for what it is, and I think they did a masterly job with their editor of putting it together.
I was told before that you've seen the movie with a packed house a couple of times, and that was making me wonder, do you typically like to watch your finished films? And if not, what makes Heretic a different experience in theater for you?
Well, to me, films are meaningless without a proper audience, without the cinema. So, hooray for the cinema. And let me say, hooray for...
Oh, yeah. We're clapping for the cinema right now.
Well, yeah, and particularly this one I was watching at the beginning. What's this called? Alamo Slave House or something? Draft House.
Alamo Draft House is the best. We all know that. I mean,
yeah, it's cool. It's cool. It's wonderful bar and food and to have a thing up at the beginning that says you get a one warning for your phone and then you're out. Brilliant. Yes, I'm absolutely convinced films are better viewed collectively.
So digging in to your experience working with your co-stars now, who are absolutely exceptional, Chloe East, Sophie Thatcher, they deliver so big in the film. I've got a big two-part question about working with them. You are a veteran in this industry, you are an icon. What is something you like to do for up-and-coming actors to make them feel supported and like they can deliver their best work? But then also, what's something unique about their energy that brought something out of you that's brand new?
Well, I'm not sure I was able to give them anything at all. And again, today I saw it most clearly of all. They're absolutely brilliant in a with a very difficult task. You know, they have to start being scared 20 minutes in and then go on progressively in little increments, get more and more terrified. They have to make speeches when they're at their most terrified. And what I really noticed tonight was how brilliant they are. Maybe some people who are watching this tonight have read those terrible old books like Save the Cat, about how to write a screenplay and how you have to devise some means of making the audience like your protagonist by saving a cat or something like that. And they do it so brilliantly at the beginning of this film. Right at the beginning, they're just likable. And maybe part of that comes from the fact that they, as well as being properly genius actors and film stars, they're Mormons, or they were raised Mormon. And there's no sense of them having to act some kind of glassy-eyed zealot. They wear it very easily.
They're both exceptional. There's certain line delivery, I mean, for all three of you, that I'm very hung up on, where if it's not delivered in a pitch perfect manner, it falls completely flat, and consistently everybody nails it.
Well, nice of you to say that. I see flaws in my own, but definitely not in them.
I'm gonna save a question that I like asking for the end that you're not gonna like. We're gonna get to that later. Just for fun though, if the three of you sat down for a round of Monopoly, who would win?
That's a very good question. Well, I would win because I've learnt to cheat. I have a son who's an inveterate cheat at Monopoly. He knows where to hide the big bills, you know, down his pants and in the loo and all that. So I would win.
Whatever you gotta do.
Whatever it takes.
So here's something from our conversation that I didn't have time to follow up on the other day, but we've got some time now, so I'm gonna do it. You were telling me about working with Sophie and Chloe, and you mentioned that they did certain things on this set that you couldn't even dream of doing yourself. Can you give me a specific example for each of them? Something they did that made you stop and go like, my God, I'd never be able to do that like that.
Well, I can't give you individual ones, but together what they did so well, and which I've struggled with, is they react so well. I mean, quite like words. You know, I'm more comfortable when I've got dialogue. So this job was a dream job for me because I never shut up. But they had to stand there and listen, and with a camera prowling around them, crazy Chung Hun Chung, the DP, with his dollies and his shopping trolleys and his things over his neck, and he was on and on. These were very, very long takes. You know, filmmakers who are here or around the country tonight watching will know that it's a long take if it's 3 minutes. And these were 12-minute takes. Imagine someone, you know, right up close to your face for 12 minutes, not going self-conscious in that moment, or thinking my jaw's gone stiff, you know. And they were amazing like that. They're just completely free, and I see their souls. That's all the camera wants.